First things first, as I mentioned at the top, Alabama took on SEC Media Days. As I previously mentioned, Kalen DeBoer was there. He was joined by Caden Proctor. He was joined by Tim Keenan. He was joined by Deontae Lawson. I thought that all three players had some really good things to say. I thought that they really conducted themselves in the way that you would expect upperclassmen and leaders on the team to conduct themselves. If you've heard any of them speak, it was kind of more the same from that, right? I do think that all three players are going to be permanent captains. Deontae Lawson being, Kalen DeBoer even mentioned, he's the lone returning captain from last season. And the fact that he is back this season and is there for SEC Media Days tells you what his players or what his teammates think of him and what he thinks of his teammates. The fact that he, returned, obviously coming back from injury, but the fact that he's there really tells you what that team thinks of him. There was a lot also made about Tim Keenan being the spiritual leader on the team. I know last season he also was given the award, was one of the guys given the award for the religious spiritual side of the team that they give out at Calvary that I was at. I did a video on that last summer. If you haven't, been a part of it, you might want to watch that. I know Ty Simpson also got that award as well. So these are, this is a team that is led, not just from a brothership and partnership perspective on the football field, but they are, a fairly tight brotherhood from a spiritual component as well as a fairly, I don't want to say super religious team, but they definitely have that component that's kind of an underlying element that a lot of the guys do believe. Additional thing, one of the funnier moments that kind of came up, again, when we're just talking about the players and some of the things that were said, Caden Proctor was asked about his cologne collection. And it was something that I was actually completely unaware of. But apparently Caden Proctor has about 170 bottles of cologne based on what he said. And his thought process was, he said he started it back in 8th grade, and it's, he wanted to kind of end the stigma of big guys have to smell. So he's like, as a big guy, I don't ever want to smell. So I have all the cologne so that I always stay smelling fresh. I thought it was kind of funny. I thought that you saw a little bit of somebody's personality. That's what sometimes you don't always get out of media days. I think if reporters do a good job of asking questions, it definitely helps. But sometimes media days are a kind of semi-polished event that, getting the truth you're going to get some of the truth, right? But at the end of the day, these answers, these people have been media trained, whether they be players, coaches, etc. They have been media trained as to what to say, what not to say. And there is a level of, not going too deep into answers that happens at an event like this because they know every reporter in the country is going to be there. So I did think that was really funny when they mentioned that. Multiple of the players, especially on defense, I don't think Caden Proctor was specifically asked about it, but I know Tim Keenan and Deontae Lawson were both asked about Thomas Castellanos, the quarterback at Florida State, his comments regarding that game. It's going to be upcoming, and they both, said some variation of it's going to be taken care of. The comments will be taken care of on the field. The disrespect will be taken care of on the field. It really sounds like Alabama's, going with a business means business. Like, we'll take care of this, on the football field. We're not going to talk the talk. We're just going to, do what we need to do, and we're going to move on with our day. I will say it was a little funny that Castellanos, in a video here recently, seemed to, I don't want to say walk it back, but seemed to kind of almost take some heat off of that, where he was saying, those boys only went 2-10 last season. I got to fire them up. I also thought it was just really funny as somebody who paid a lot of attention to college football last season. Castellanos was not the big, bad, elite quarterback at Boston College that he's portraying himself to be, tearing up the ACC. So specifically talking the talk that he's talking, he's talking as if he's some elite transfer that was just an absolute animal, transferring from a lower division up to a higher division and I'm going to keep it rolling. He was literally in the same conference last season and was an okay quarterback, but it wasn't like he was an elite quarterback. So that's a big thing where it's like, I'm not exactly sure that the message that he's trying to get, if he really is just trying to hype up his guys, I'm not sure that's the message that's getting out. Because anyone who has seen him on the field or, is looking at it like, sure, okay, yeah, if that's what you want to say, that's what you want to say. But it just really felt, disingenuous. It also was, like I said, very funny to me that he walked it back. I know Paul Feinbaum and some others have said that they just don't think this is going to be a competitive game. I'm of that mindset, right? I'm of the mindset that Florida State, even without the comments, Florida State was not as prepared for the Alabama team as Alabama is going to be prepared for Florida State. If we go to something that Kalen DeBoer said, and not trying to jump too far ahead, but Kalen DeBoer specifically was asked about his thoughts of, did his season 1 live up to the Alabama standard? And he straight up just said no, right? It took him a minute to get to it, right? He was like, there were things that we did that were, but obviously we didn't make the playoffs, so that isn't living up to that standard. And so, but when you think about something like that, when you think about the fact that Alabama, had a good season but did not live up to its standard, then Alabama is got something to prove, right? They have that chip on their shoulder. You have a guy like Ty Simpson that's proving that, hey, I am the quarterback that is going to lead this team. You have other guys that, a Deontae Lawson that comes back to, again, prove, hey, this is why I came back. Tim Keenan, all these guys that, like, in some cases we're going to be fringe NFL draft picks or fringe, level NFL draft picks. These guys come back and they all are playing for one common goal. And that common goal is to prove what they can do as it relates to, making the college football playoff and potentially trying to win the college football playoff. When Florida State is the first team on that type of schedule, it reminds me of a Nick Saban team where it's like, we don't care who who the team is. You're first on the schedule. You're the one that's getting checked off first, right? So immediately that first team, you're going to be fired up, and that's the one that you expect them to have, some of the most fire and ready for, because that is game 1 on a thing where you didn't achieve your best, so now you have to prove it to everyone else. So I immediately thought that Alabama was going to have that fire, but then you back that up with a quarterback of that team giving them the bulletin board material, right? Giving them the material of, oh, they don't have Nick Saban to save them, or, oh, I'm going to run through them like this, or I'm going to do that, or whatever, right? That immediately, in my opinion, just put the nail in the coffin, right? There was the possibility that Alabama was going to do that no matter what, just because, again, they were first on the schedule and you're next kind of situation. However, when you have a guy like Thomas Castellanos that is having this, that's making these comments and almost provoking the team, then of course, right? Like, I fully expect Alabama to absolutely dominate Florida State. I expect this to be a situation of similar to the Vandy linebacker that said, Alabama, you're next a few years ago, and then Vandy gets absolutely dog walked. I honestly expect that to be what happens. A lot of old takes exposed happening after this game. I really don't think it's going to be close. I don't think Florida State has the horses to hang with Alabama. Obviously, they've tried to replace. They've done some changes trying to replace their offensive coordinator with Gus Malzahn and bringing in other players, but I really just don't think they're going to have the guys to hang with Alabama. So I think Alabama's going to have a lot to prove, and I really do expect Alabama dominates that first game. So, Tim Keenan, Deontae Lawson, were both asked about that. Deontae Lawson, a lot of his questions stemmed around his injury and how tough that's been. And I thought that, his answers were very, very good. It was kind of what you would expect. He's been working hard trying to get back. He gave a lot of shout outs to the medical staff at the university and everyone that's kind of been pushing him, and also allowed him to realize, I really need to focus on everything that I can, because there is a possibility that this could all be gone in the blink of an eye. He said that's something that his injury, kind of told him. Then when you potentially go to a guy like Kaydn Proctor, and this is one of the last ones that I'll mention, Kalen DeBoer specifically also said that he wanted to give a shout out to Kaydn Proctor because he was taking 16 hours over the summer and going to be able to graduate in 3 years, and noted that he was doing it with a 3.7 GPA, and that included the short stint that he transferred back to Iowa, which obviously complicates things. So the fact that Kaydn Proctor is still going to be able to graduate in the time frame that he's able to graduate in with a 3.7 GPA and kind of be at that level, the implications being that he's going to be able to go to the NFL after this season, but he would always already have his degree, was something that I thought that was very, very cool and was a big thing for Kalen DeBoer to mention.